Hello there my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars video. It is I coming at you once again, your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg, and today we're once again talking about Maul Shadow Lord, the upcoming animated Star Wars series coming on April 6th, and something which I think George Lucas would be very proud of. Now, in all fairness, we have no idea how much or how little Disney Star Wars George consumes these days, if he still does. We know he watched the sequel trilogy. We know he congratulated Tony Gilroy on Rogue One. He was on set for The Mandalorian. Dave Filoni consulted him for Ahsoka Season 1. And we also know George viewed and enjoyed the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, at least according to Pablo Hidalgo. But when it comes to the rest, The Acolyte, Andor, even animated shows like The Bad Batch, the Tales of Anthologies and so on, we have no clue. But I would wager for Maul Shadow Lord, Dave Filoni gave George a call. This series is doing something that George Lucas wanted to do in canon for over 2 decades. But first, let me set the scene. So with the release of the teaser a few days ago, some really awesome Star Wars theories are starting to gain traction in the fandom, and it seems like one character at the center of most of them is Devon Izara. A former Jedi Padawan and survivor of Order 66, the synopsis says she is someone that Maul is going to use for his own gains. A red-skinned Twi'lek who many believe might be the canon version of Darth Talon. Despite differences in their backstories, even if they use the name Talon or not, Devon was inspired by the expanded universe Sith. And in case you don't know this, George Lucas was obsessed with Talon. We know he had his favourites. He loved Chewbacca, he loved Yoda, he saw Luke Skywalker as a self-insert. But when it came to Twi'leks, George was infatuated, and his favourite wasn't Taylor Sakura, as a lot of fans think. It was Darth Talon, a character who exists in the old expanded universe over 100 years after the events of the movies, during a massive Sith resurgence. The rule of 2 was gone, replaced by an entire order of Sith warriors, and Talon was one of the deadliest among them. She served as one of the Emperor's hands for Darth Krayt, and even though it sounds shallow, her looks were one of her most powerful attributes, famously seducing Jedi, and even Luke's descendant, Cade. Unlike many Sith, Talon never wavered in her devotion. And here's the thing, whenever the conversation of Darth Talon comes up, fans like to point out the strange and often inconsistent relationship that George had to the EU. When those stories were written, they were written to be considered canon, but in the way the hierarchy of canon worked pre-Disney, they were always secondary to the on-screen content. But they were stories and characters which George could pick and choose from, and several characters who do eventually appear in the movies actually originate in the books or the comics. But there's one character George loved from those stories more than any other, Darth Talon, and he tried on numerous occasions to bring her into other Star Wars media, the abandoned Darth Maul video game, and of course, George's sequel trilogy. In this version of events, just like in Maul Shadow Lord, Darth Talon was going to be very different. He was going to overwrite her backstory, reshape it so she fits just a few years after Return of the Jedi, and in one of those stories, she would have been Darth Maul's apprentice, kind of similar to what they're doing in Maul Shadow Lord. According to the Star Wars Archives, episodes 1 to 3, 1999 to 2005, Maul would train Talon as his new apprentice, effectively making her the Darth Vader of this new story, while Maul would take after Darth Sidious, establishing power by means of consolidating a crime network from the shadows, as he did during the Clone Wars, becoming a new threat in the wake of a fallen galactic empire. And as you can see, my friends, time period aside, this is post-episode 6, Maul Shadow Lord is just after the prequel trilogy. There are so many parallels between the two. Maul rebuilding a crime network, training a new apprentice in his own philosophy instead of a traditional Sith, and gaining power in secret. In Maul Shadow Lord, this is going to be on the planet of Janix. I don't think it's going to be one for one, but the inspiration is clearly there, and it's worth pointing out, George wrote these treatments before Filoni made Star Wars Rebels, before Maul's final death. Darth Talon was used in the pitch that would ultimately be given to Disney. Originally, the backstory of the character that would become Kylo Ren had him seduced to the dark side thanks to a character meant to be Darth Talon, who was working for a shadowy character who eventually became Snoke. In the end, of course, The Force Awakens cut out the middleman, and Darth Talon was nowhere to be seen. But it seems to me that Lucasfilm is circling back to some of these concepts, and for all we know, the new character Devon Izara is a reworking of Talon. But here's another fundamental question. Because Maul already has a future canon end, which can't be undone, what will become of his apprentice? What's gonna happen to Devon? Could she be recruited as an Inquisitor, captured and killed by the Empire, or maybe even murdered by Maul himself? Or is she a character who escapes Maul, eventually survives, and is a character Filoni wants to circle back to someday, similar to Omega and so many other characters from animation? Could she be someone we see in Ahsoka Season 2? We know we're going back to Dathomir, which is where Maul is from, and we know there's going to be a Night Sister subplot. Could Izara, a Twi'lek who was once trained by Maul, be part of that? Maybe she becomes an assassin, someone who's hired by Thrawn. But my guess is that she is an homage to Talon, but someone who dies within the confines of Shadow Lord. I really don't think Lucasfilm is brave enough to do anything more with her, or make her a larger part of the Star Wars galaxy. How many characters have they introduced over the years where fans have said, this person's going to be very important, and we never hear from them again? So I'm not going to hold my breath. And I just want to warn you guys, if this is meant to be Talon, let's just say they're going to be a bit more conservative with the way that she's portrayed. She's not going to be the same Talon from Legends. Nothing suggestive, no powers of seduction. I don't think they would do that. I don't think Disney would approve. It's something George Lucas would have probably wanted, but don't expect that. That's one very big difference in her character design between Canon and Legends. And I do just want to warn you, if you're expecting a one-for-one adaptation, so often when Disney Star Wars brings characters or concepts from the EU into canon, they're often very watered down. Aside from the criminal underworld stuff, her appearance, her red skin, and the fact she's Maul's apprentice, I wouldn't expect anything else that is similar to Talon. Maul has abandoned the Sith, but then again, he does seem to recite part of the Sith code, so maybe in this time period between the Clone Wars and before Star Wars Rebels, post-Savage, but pre-meeting Ezra, he tries to create his own Order of Sith, some kind of offshoot, and in that sense, this adaptation could work. But what's fascinating to me is that Maul fighting Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in The Phantom Menace changed the way the Jedi fought during the Clone Wars. As we see in the Anakin and Obi-Wan comics, after the Battle of Naboo, Jedi Padawans were trained to fight lightsabers instead of just blasters, and they even fought holograms of Maul. So there's a very strong chance this Padawan has already heard of him. I wonder how they're going to reconcile that. What is it that makes her abandon the Jedi ways, even post Order 66? So like I say, my friends, the name itself might not matter, the visual design, the role, and the legacy are all present, with a slightly toned down presentation. It feels like Star Wars is paying homage to one of George Lucas's favourite characters. What do you guys think of this? Do you think Devon might be the canon version of Talon? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, my friends, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and may the Force be with you, always.